Word down your way. Testing 2, 2.
So, welcome to another Word Down Your Way. One of the delightful constants in this uncertain and topsy-turvy world is that somewhere around the globe, flags will be flying, bunting will be up, and Level 42 will be almost permanently on tour, as they will be again in 2025. What a joy. Mark King, it's lovely to see you. How are you doing?
Well, hello, Mark and David. Thanks for having me on. A joy.
And you're in the Isle of Wight. We join you in the Isle of Wight, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's my home. I was born here, born and raised on the island, and I still live here ostensibly. Got a place in London, which is very handy for all the hopping in and out. But yeah, the Isle of Wight's still, the place in my heart.
So was the first gig you ever went to? Was that on the Isle of Wight? Tell us the first live entertainment you ever went to. It can be an end of the pier show. It can be anything you like.
It was actually in a church hall on the Isle of Wight in Newport, and I went to see a band called J, that was spelt J-A-E, which stood for John, Andy, and LD, and they was the first band I ever saw, and it was John Wheeler, Graham Elderfield, and Andy, I can't remember his second name, and it was absolutely incredible. And I think I would have been about 10 years old when I went to see this band. And because I just had this draw towards music, and I'd got a drum kit. My dad had bought me a drum kit a year before. So I was really, really sort of getting into the whole music thing. And as it turned out, I'd actually bought the drum kit from Graham Elderfield, who was the drummer in this band. So that might have had something to do with why I'd gone along to see this particular performance. But I was absolutely smitten by it. And I remember they played Bend Me, Shape Me by Amen Corner, which always sort of stuck in my head because I thought at that tender age that the words seemed sort of naughty and provocative.
What were they? A pop group or were they a rock band? What kind of music was it?
Yeah, it was very much a covers band, and I think that it's always the way on the Isle of Wight, having this great, this sort of loads of holiday camps, but especially back then. I mean, it's not so much these days, but there were holiday camps and pubs, and people. The Isle of Wight was a big holiday destination, so people would come over here and spend their summer holidays. And you needed entertainment for all these people. So pubs all along the seafronts in Sandown, Shanklin, back in Ventnor, even Ryde was really, really big. Cowes, of course, and there would be so many venues for up-and-coming bands to play in. However, what these venues didn't really want from any of the bands playing was original material. That like who cares? Yeah. No, what they wanted was the sort of the top 40 of the day, and popular songs. So I sort of cut my teeth doing exactly that. I was playing in bands, and strangely, the when I met Boone and Phil Gould, the brothers from Shanklin, who we then went on to form Level 42. Those guys were playing in cover bands too, and one of the cover bands that I was also in, that they were in, was a band called Joe Bear, which was run by John Wheeler, he was the J in J
in the original band.
Yeah, the original band that I went to see.
So do you think playing in cover bands is a kind of apprenticeship that everybody should go through?
Well, it certainly didn't do you any harm, as a musician and as an aspiring songwriter, because there is a reason why the hits of the day are the hits of the day, and there's a great thing that you can learn. I wouldn't say that you have to. You have to copy any of that things, but there is a formula, and there is that there's a science to the construction of things that people like, and that it gets across to people. And so when you're if you're doing this from a young age, it sort of it gets in you, and it's something that you don't have to search for later down the line. It's something that becomes almost instinctive, because where something should be going to attract somebody else's ear, which is primarily why bands are formed anyway, is to reach other people and try and get your music across.
Can you remember what kind of songs were particularly successful with your audiences? And just old covers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and it was the big hit. So it was like tie a yellow ribbon, tie a yellow ribbon around the old road. That was one that just was a perennial. And when I used to play in this other band, because very often the musicians, we'd all be playing in different
move about. Yeah.
There was no loyalty as such. It was just, can I get a gig? And you've got to remember that at the age of 14, 15, I was playing 5-6 nights a week, around these various places, consequently not getting to bed very early.
I'm gonna say,
my schoolwork suffered horribly. And
5 or 6 nights a week, really?
That's incredible. When you were 14, how old were you? 15, 16?
Yeah, 14, 15, 16. I started playing at the age of 11. I was playing 3 nights a week with a band called Pseudofoot, with Martin and Annie Cave, bless them. And we'd play at the Gurnard Hotel on a Friday night. Saturday night, we'd play at the Woodvale. This is also in Gurnard, strangely. And then Sunday lunchtime, we play on the Ride Queen, or the Medway Queen originally, which then became the Ride Queen. And that was it. So I'd be doing that. And
aged 11, you were 11?
Yeah, I was 11 years old.
And you were the drummer, presumably, right?
I was the drummer. Yeah. I was. And because I was 11, a couple of songs of the day, hits were Rockin Robin, which was Michael Jackson. He was this little kid, because we were the same age. So they got me to sing. This wasn't anything that had ever occurred to me before. I was 11 years old. I loved drums. I was into Buddy Rich, Ginger Baker. But now because I've got this gig, and Rockin Robin's a hit. Right, you're singing this one. Okay, well I can handle that, because it was actually quite a good song. But if you think sort of looking ahead as to what happened to my career, is that I became a singing musician, and so obviously this was something that was put in place right back then. And another song which I wasn't quite so keen on playing was Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool, because little Jimmy Osmond,
of course,
had a hit with that, and so consequently I had to sing that too.
So you're a novelty act to a certain extent, weren't you? Because it's an 11-year-old drummer. He sings a bit.
Yeah, it was like that, and I think that there must have been many times when people thought that, well, he must be a dwarf, because he can't really be 11 years old, otherwise he wouldn't be allowed in the pub, surely.
Absolutely.
Rules are rules. But landlords would turn a blind eye to the whole thing, and it sort of became, but I was very good. I was good at what I did. I was a good drummer in the band. I wasn't particularly schooled in the niceties of it, and my mum, bless her, Bridget, she dutifully took me to these gigs, and then would wait around and then ship all the gear home. And of course, being mum, she set it up, and she took it all down, because I was 11 years old and I wasn't interested in that. And then mum, when your
mum would come on, and then as your roadie, dismantle.
His mum was his drum roadie, Bob. Let's get this play.
That's fantastic.
She really, really was. And she's still alive today, and has never forgiven me for for firing her. And then when I made it.
And they would have to encourage you to do your maths homework when you got back, presumably.
Well, this is the problem, you see, is that I did fail miserably at school. I got on really, really well. I loved school for the social side of things. I loved being in the school orchestra, and Graham Holmes, our music teacher at Cowes High, was incredibly supportive, and he loved music, which is always really infectious, to pass on to students and things. And I had a really great friend, one of my best friends in the sort of the school band and whatnot, was a guy called Adam Ockerford. who is now Professor Adam Ockleford, and he's Professor of Music at Roehampton University, which is the complete antithesis of where I ended up going. But Adam was incredibly studious, unbelievably bright, and, you know, was sort of grade 8 piano at the age of 12 and so on and so forth and stuff. And we were just really great friends. But that's where my schooling sort of ended, really, because I failed all my O levels and had to do retakes. And by this time, I was in the first year of sixth form. And on the second set of retakes, I managed to scrape by one English language, which you would assume I'd get, as I could barely speak the language. But I scraped by an English language O level. And I was sort of studying for my third set of retakes. In the meantime, all my friends and peers were halfway through their A levels. And then one day, I don't know why, I just sort of decided to show up to school in double denim. I had a denim jacket. School uniform was, you know, you had to wear school uniform. And I just showed up in jeans, at which point Lou
You were
Cox,
summoned.
Tutor. Yes, I was. Joe in my room now. They always called me Joe at school.
Yeah, the head will
Joe
see
in
you
my
now.
office. And Joe, he said, I think your education's complete. I'm not sure there's much more, that we can do here. So whatever you plan on doing in life, I just wish you all the very best, you know. And I sat there blinking and saying, well, that's it. You know, you've got to remember, all you've known all your life is school. And then somebody says, right, that's it, you're done, you know. So I left at one lunchtime, probably a Monday morning. And I got home and my dad had been working at, he worked at the prison, Albany prison, and he was home for his lunch. And I sort of swanned in and he said, hey, Nipper, what you doing back? And I said, well, Dad, my education's complete.
I passed with flying colours.
Yes. He said, what are you going to do then? I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, go in. He said, put your stuff in a bag. He said, get out. And when you know what you're going to do and get a job, you can come back. And that was it.
Wow.
You see, that's the tough love of a kind of vanished age. No, John Lydon often says this. He says, my father did me the greatest favour he could ever do me, which was kick me out at the age of 15.
Yeah, he was kicked out for a long time. He was in the wilderness. He said it really changed him. Because now it'd be completely different. You'd still be occupying a back room somewhere looking at a computer game with 20 embassy.
Yeah, that's right. At the age of 28, but because their education still isn't complete. See, now my dad really did do me a massive favour, as did the school, because they could have just said, oh well, he'll just carry on and on and on and on.
Yeah, sure.
And I probably would have somehow managed to scrape some place at a college or a uni, whereas actually that wasn't where I was meant to be going. I was meant to just get dumped out in the cold and have a quick slap round the head about reality. Because, if you think, I've been pretty cosseted in terms of people going, oh, he's good, isn't he? It's from the age of 9 years old and stuff. It's sort of, I almost sound like Lena Zavaroni, don't I? But only it had a happier ending because, but what Dad did for me was absolutely great. And sure enough, within 2 weeks, I had got a job, albeit a dreadfully mundane and humiliating thing from all the plans that I had for myself about where I thought I was going to be, and sure, I'm going to be on the greatest stages in the world and all this, in my fantasy 17-year-old brain. Now I wasn't, and I was sitting on a production line making lighters for Ronson's in a factory on the Isle of Wight, and it was a real sort of wake up. But at least I could sort of go back to my dad and say, I've got a job there, Can
I come home?
Absolutely.
Get in my bedroom back. But you kept the band going. You were in various bands, weren't you? And got signed very quickly, didn't you, when you were playing in the Isle of Wight or whatever?
Well, the thing is that the level 42, as I'd sort of said earlier on, that the Grohl brothers and myself were very good mates, and we sort of we had a real we enjoyed the same music. I mean, that's why we hung out together and stuff. And Phil Gould had been far more studious and had managed to get himself to the Royal Academy of Music in London, so he'd left the island and gone. Myself and Boone were still sort of swanning about on the island, but I decided to just, let's up sticks and go. So I did sort of leave at the age of 18. I just turned 19, I think, and headed off for London in an old milk van. And I spent the first few nights in London sort of sleeping in the van. But these are all sort of things that you could do, and I think it was probably somewhat safer to do than it would be today. But it's the equivalent of being homeless, I guess, and sleeping rough, definitely. And then Boone shortly moved up after that, and we managed to get together. I got a job in a music shop in London, and we sort of made our way through then. But what we were doing in the meantime was, because we were friends, we did meet up. We met Mike Lindup. My dear friend, and who still remains in level 42 to this day. And we used to rehearse at the music school he was at, the Guildhall School of Music in London. And, that within playing, was sort of jamming around there on a Monday night, I think it was, maybe Tuesday night. Somebody came along and heard us playing, Andy Soiker, actually, who had his own independent record label, Elite Records, and he liked one of the things we were doing and said, I'll record it. And that was really quite quick, Mark, that we'd really been just sort of jamming together for about 3 months, over sort of through and around Christmas time. And then we managed to get into the studio and we recorded a song called Love Meeting Love. And off we went, never overnight success, but we were certainly the sort of music that we were playing at that time, which then became termed Brit Funk. We had no idea that it was Brit Funk, but then we were just playing all the kinds of music that we really liked, which just happened to be very much jazz influenced, funk influenced from the States, and mainly American influences in our music. Pepper,
so what would that be? Is that Billy Cobham, or is that Chick Corea, or what kind of thing?
Yes, exactly those guys. That Billy Cobham was obviously an incredible drummer, still is an incredible drummer. And he was a huge hero for myself and Phil and Mike Lindup, who was also studying percussion at the Guildhall School of Music, massive fan. So, we were listening to Bill Cobham, and he was in a band called the Mahavishnu Orchestra, which featured this incredible guitarist, John McLaughlin, and, who was a Yorkshireman. And it's funny that I know, like, the nationalities of these guys is because every so often, the same with Allan Holdsworth, who was playing with Tony Williams' Lifetime. Allan Holdsworth was from Bradford, I think. And it's the very fact that they were from these little sort of far-flung places in the UK, same as we were. But it gave you a feeling of
confidence here.
Yes, it is. This is all doable. They're not all. Not everybody is Miles Davis, or Chick Corea, or some sort of exotic.
Stanley Clarke.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I was watching an interview recently with Paul Scholes, the footballer, Paul Scholes and Nicky Butt, and they were both talking about when they were 15, they never dreamed they would make it because they came from North Manchester. And they thought nobody who came from North Manchester ever made it as a footballer. How could it possibly happen to them? Of course it did. You know what I mean?
Do you know? Class systems are sort of quite in your psyche. We're brought up in a way that
I know my place kind of thing.
Yeah, well, really, it was that, and I think that what would have been expected of me coming from a family largely of farm workers would have been to become a farm worker. I think my dad was probably the first guy to break that mold by getting a job in the prison service, which he did because he needed a house for his 3 children,
right.
and it came with sort of a tied accommodation. So that was why Dad sort of broke that thing. But he trained as a carpenter, So this was definitely our sort of working class roots. And it's very hard to take that out of someone if you try and aspire to something else, because you always want to be looking for the possibility, actually, can this be done, or is there some secret that we don't know? So therefore you get these geniuses like McLaughlin and Allan Holdsworth et al. Incredible musicians, and you think, well, now these guys, they're doing it. This is.
So Mike and I, whenever we see a picture of John McLaughlin nowadays, we always send it to each other and say, "My God, will you look at him? He's 80.
I can't remember how old he is, but he literally looks about 48, and I think he may almost be nearly 80 now.
Oh, well, you think he must be? He must be 80.
He looks fantastic. And the annoying thing is, it speaks volumes about the value of yoga and the macrobiotic diet.
Doesn't it just?
I don't think he smokes and drinks very much. I don't think he sits around watching, TV.
He actually does all of those things. He does, he likes to drink. He likes foreign wines, and but he went on that spiritual journey that I think we all do in our late teens and very early 20s, where he was asking far bigger questions of himself. And of course, back in this would have been early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, the whole spiritual quest was quite an awakening coming out of the whole peace and love movement. And so it's of no surprise. But once again, it does go to show, I mean, the guy does he's got the best head of hair.
It's unbelievable.
Ridiculous hair.
It's Rick Astley-esque. It is. It's not red. It's incredible.
It's just extraordinary. So when I was interested. So when Level 42 started up, you started playing in front of, crowds. Your kind of knockabout in the pubs and clubs of the Isle of Wight probably stood you in good stead. You were used to audiences, yeah? Talk about that.
Very much so, and also too, probably more importantly, used to being ignored, because when you play in a covers band, you're very much the wallpaper. I mean, who walks into a pub where there's a cover band playing that has walked into the pub because there's a cover band playing? No. Not really. You're going in there with your mates and you want to have a pint, this, that, and the other, and for crying out loud, couldn't they turn that down a bit? That was very much the vibe. And funnily enough, the very first gig that Level 42 ever got to play was in the social, the bar, the students bar at Guildhall School of Music. Yeah, the uni bar. And we got into song 4 and were just told to stop, because it was... all right, that's enough, and that's it. And that was the end of our first gig. We managed to get 4 songs in, playing our own music. And not only was it, and then some other guy actually had the temerity to come up and play some sort of popular American hits at the time just on a piano, which everybody thought was absolutely fine. So God,
that's dispiriting, isn't it? A whole band
playing in front of audiences is something that it becomes a bit of an art, and some people are much more natural at it than others. That's why you have great frontmen, because they are very comfortable with it. I've certainly never been a great frontman. I understand that, but I was always armed with a certain ability on the instrument I chose to play, which ended up being bass guitar. That was enough for people to get over the nonsense that I babbled on the microphone between songs.
Did you develop techniques for getting people's attention then? You were talking about being a covers band and being the wallpaper.
No, not at all, Mark. I was just playing what I loved. That was it. There is no plan to this thing. I think that, anybody that sets out thinking, oh, I'm going to do this because it's going to do this, that probably wouldn't end up well.
No, I meant on stage, just with audiences, trying to get the audience to connect.
Of course, there are certain things. Once you start playing things and you realise that, when you get to certain bits in songs and certain things you're doing are being featured, or you sort of muscle your way through, and it has a response, you know, the audience react to it, and you think, oh, that's a good one, you know, I'll do that again, you know. It's the equivalent of a comedian with a funny line, you know, or any actor in a play that, you know, oh, I can milk this for another couple of seconds because the audience love this bit, so don't rush into the next line. Let's just you know, milk this moment in time.
How do the rest of the band feel about it? I always find when I talk to musicians, some musicians think that they will actually say, we don't want to talk to the audience. We're not there to talk. We're there to play. Whereas if you're in the audience, you like people talking to you. And I often feel that the musicians are slightly resentful of the one musician who does talk to the audience.
Well, you know, somebody in that organisation has to do it, and something that I have always found like slightly cheesy is interaction within the band, in as much as they talk to themselves. I think the only time that I didn't find it cheesy was watching Foo Fighters and the interaction that Dave Grohl had with Taylor Hawkins was just wonderful, and it just seemed completely natural. And I suppose, you know, how can you sort of have a one-to-one with 40,000 people stood at, you know, Reading Festival or something? So he or Dave would be addressing the audience, but he'd do it by talking to Taylor Hawkins and saying, so T, you know, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And Taylor, of course, because he was vocalist in the band as well, had the mic, and he would respond and he'd say, oh, I don't know, Dave, you know, I think this and this, that and the other. And there was this kind of really homely thing, which, you know, and then they'd launch into this next sort of like wall of sound again. And then they get to the end of it and, you know, and it was just a wonderfully relaxing way of doing that. And, you know, I remember speaking of Dave Grohl, I got to talk to him after one of the shows they'd done at Reading, actually. And, you know, he was sort of sitting in there smoking a cigarette and chilling out after the gig. And boy, did those guys put in a shift. And, you know, he said, Mark, come over here. You know, this is the first time we'd met. And he was saying, you know, I said, I just don't know where you get the energy from, Dave. That was just phenomenal, you know. And I said, and your interaction with the audience is just second to none, mate. You know, wonderful frontman. And he said, well, the thing is, Mark, he said that I can't do what Bowie did. He said Bowie could sit there, and he was smoking a cigarette at this time, Dave was. And he said Bowie just has to walk to the side of the stage and he'd take his cigarette and he'd just flick it like that. And the crowd would go wild. He said, I can't do that. I can't do that. He said, so I would just sit there and I would just talk and talk, you know, and he said, and that is the only way that I can get across. But I sure as hell wish I could do it like Bowie could. So, you know, there's always these sort of levels and things like that. But back to what you were saying, Dave, about you know, people like, or you know, to hear people talk. The problem that Level 42 has always had, and I'm very sorry to say this, is that as the guy, you know, the main sort of man in the center of the stage, when I do have to talk to the audience, part of my condition that I clearly have had all my life, you know, which would be somewhere on the spectrum, which the upside is it allows me to do what I can do on musical instruments and the bass in particular, because there's a speed of thought involved in it that I don't have to try with. It's just something that comes flooding out. The downside of this is that it bleeds through into my conversational technique. So there are no filters on, and I just say the first thing that comes into my head, just to fill the gap. And which is sometimes problematic because things just pop out as they run through my head. So, you know, that old thing of, oh, did I just say that out loud? That happens all the time for me. And how I've actually learned to stop that happening is to, I segue when I'm arranging the set, the shows that we do, I segue an awful lot of the songs. so that one song goes into the other, into the other. And I always try and make sure that it's something that the audience know. And I know it works because I see the response from the audience, and the reaction is that, oh yeah, they know this one, and this, I love this song. And then we get to the end of that, and then the strains, however I've arranged the tune, come in for the next one, and you see people go, oh yeah, I like this one, and that stops. Then it stops the problem of me, of the song coming to an end, and me wandering up and going, I think you're all fat twats or something, as it just sort of rushes through my head.
This is almost a Tourette's we're talking about here.
Yes, it is. It's exactly what it is, Mark. It's a form of that, So I can get round that by just segueing the music and then getting the actual chat down to a small bit. And also, because I do this, I can somehow rein it all in and, say the things that I want to say that are important to say without actually veering off into the realm of offending anybody.
I can remember when Level 42 in the 80s were really taking off, and you did all those big supports and huge venues. I think you supported the Police, you supported Queen at one point, and then Madonna. Have you got any memories of what it was like going out and playing to those kind of crowds? Also, crowds that weren't yours.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not quite that old, Mark. I can't remember. I remember all of these things really well. Actually, it's a lovely thing, and all sort of moments to be treasured. You mentioned the Police, and going out. Our first sort of big support and our first time into Europe was opening for the Police, 1981. We had, I think it was 5 shows we opened for in Germany. And, a really sort of steep learning curve, because we were going from, very small 200, 300, 400 size clubs in the UK to 6, 7, 8,000, seat sports halls in Germany. And that's quite a leap, and was, terrifying for the first gig. And then we got into it. The Queen, we opened for, I think, 1985, 86. We did a tour around Europe with them, and that was also wonderful. And, a great sort of eclectic bill. There was Jimmy Cliff was on the bill. There was Family were on the bill in my own time, and all of that sort of stuff. And ourselves and Queen. I mean, that's quite a mix-up, but it was great to be part of that, because it was very much this is my first experience of a rock and roll circus thing. We opened for Steve Winwood right around the States and Canada, and that was when he had Ark of a Diver was like absolutely massive, and he was like the new Messiah, and he had, quite rightly so, I think, because Steve Winwood is like a real treasure of, and such a talent. Genius, I would class him as, because everything he did, if you think of his starting out being so young. Anyway, I'm just whizzing off in another direction. But we opened for Steve Winwood. We opened for Madonna around the States for 3 months. We opened for Tina Turner around the States for 2.5, maybe 3 months. And of course, being part of the Prince's Trust rock galas, which were amazing events, because it was playing with all the likes of, Sir Paul McCartney and Bowie and Jagger would just sort of showed up during the gig and said, can we come on and do Dancing in the Streets? And we did that. And Tina Turner, Phil Collins, and Eric Clapton, and Elton John. The list of mega stars that we either supported or I ended up getting to play with. George Harrison, Ringo Starr were in another one, Sir George Martin.
Yeah, because you were the kind of star bass player, weren't you? You were the first.
I was that guy in the time, and
brilliant.
It was brilliant, and it was so lovely, and that all thanks to Elton John for that, because that was in 1985. Our manager at the time, John Gould, said, "Mark, I've just had this amazing call. Elton John has asked if you'd be interested in being the bass player in the house band for this concert that's coming up, a Prince's Trust show and stuff," which to me was just such an honor. And it felt like some kind of acceptance into the the realms of things that I could only dream of before. All that aspiration that I'd had as a child suddenly comes through when you get a telephone call like that. So it was exciting, to say the least, Mark. Yeah.
Right. So just moving forward up to date. So Level 42 have announced a tour. What can people look forward to?
Well, have a guess. Just have a stab. It's I don't know. I think we'll probably do like a whole. We'll do all Donna Summer's albums. All right, that's what we're going to play. going back to our cover band roots, and we might.
Tar Yellow Ribbon.
Tar Yellow Ribbon is definitely the encore. Let's face it. Now, what we're going to be playing. Sorry, David, you're being serious, and it's quite right. We just announced our 2025 tour. Another weird thing is that I have lived most of my life living 18 months in the future, because obviously this tour, that has just been announced, it's 26 shows around the UK, and it's to mark the 40th anniversary of World Machine, which obviously we released, back in 1985, and so what you can expect is us to be playing all the songs from World Machine, and of course there will be the other songs, because World Machine in itself would probably run to about 43 or 4 minutes, I suppose. That's both sides of the vinyl. And by the time I get to work on them and sort of massage them out a bit, and I've already got some really good ideas on how I'm going to kick this thing off, which I won't sort of say now. But, one of the joys of 12 inches is that you could actually rearrange a song, and you don't lose any of the value of the song. You just somehow lengthen it out. So you go from what would have been a 3-minute, 50-second track to 6 minutes, and things like that. These are the practicalities of the MD of the band, which is what I am. So it will be playing World Machine. But as I was just going back to finish what I was saying about, I've lived my life sort of 18 months in advance. Obviously, this has just been announced now, but this has been in the planning for the last 6 or 7 months, because it's people say, oh, why aren't you coming over? Why aren't you playing Dublin? Why aren't you playing Belfast? And I would absolutely love to do that. But when our promoter, AEG, when Steve Homer goes out and starts looking at venues for us, because it depends. You can't just say we're going to play there, and you can't, mate, because the hall's full. There's somebody else playing there that night. You have to get your name down and get a gig, get the venue nailed. And so we get what are called like first holds. We get first holds, second holds on the size venues that we know we can fill, that we know we'll do well in, that are easy for people to get to. But it's also although our promoter is AEG, there are also sub-promoters within the towns who will book you into that hall on behalf of AEG, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what we tend to do is it tends to start at the end of the tour, and you work your way back. So we managed to nail the Royal Albert Hall for the London show. Again, and we have done, we played the Royal Albert Hall many times. It's an incredible venue. And then we work our way back from there in terms of, and then of course. No, go ahead.
That's really interesting. But no, we never discussed this before. So presumably, wherever your Albert Hall date is, there's loads of people looking at that date. So there are kind of theatre troupes, there are orchestral concerts, there are God knows what. Everybody's eyeing that one.
Have you actually got to be looking 18 months in advance then?
Yes, at least, Mark, at least 18 months in advance. And it actually makes it very difficult, because, that as the manager, I completely understand the whole reason for doing this. As the artist, there's part of me that goes, oh, FFS, I've only I'm still in the middle of this tour. Yeah. I'm doing this one, and I'm already looking ahead And it's like, if you're not feeling particularly up and at 'em, there's a part of you that thinks, I don't do this anymore. It's taken all the energy I've got to be here sitting, in a town in Scandinavia. And now I'm looking, I've had, emails from my agent, Neil Warnock at UTA, and I've had Steve Holmes from AEG, and they're sending me these dates and saying, what do you think, Mark? We got first holds on this. And it's like, it makes your head spin because you're thinking.
You have to think about that yourself. So you see, you're kind of managing it. Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, really yes. Hence the lack of success. You can't be good at everything, can you?
But I suppose, at the same time, there are more places to play, aren't there? There are more countries to go to than ever before. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, we've I've just signed off on a gig in Serbia yesterday, and for next year for 2025, and I very much enjoy doing the festival runs because it's we do get to visit these various places. I mean, next week. Here we are. Look, we're in the just sort of coming into the last week of October. But next week we're off we fly to Chile. We have a show in Santiago, and 2 days later we have a show in Mexico, and then 2 days after that we fly to Germany, and then we have 2 shows in Germany. Over into Holland, 2 shows in Holland, then a show in Switzerland. Then we're back in the UK for 5 days. Then we're off to Monaco. Monte Carlo, we've got a show there, and then back in and 2 London gigs, Indigo 2, which are all sold out. So, this sort of hopping around thing it's incredible. I've just celebrated my 66th birthday, and if you'd have said to the 11-year-old me, well, I mean, what the hell does an 11-year-old know? But if you'd have said to me at 17, when my dad said, well, when you find out what you want to do, you can come back. And in the meantime, pack a bag and get off, if you'd have said that to me then, Mark, that when you're 66, you'll be working as hard as you ever did. And, but enjoying it because I have such a blast doing it. I do.
Right. That's fantastic.
It is really impressive.
That's really, I'm fascinated by the fact that the world is kind of flatter, back in the day, 40 years ago, you didn't play in Chile. Nobody played in Chile. You know what I mean? It wasn't on anybody's map.
It was just the Retford Porterhouse and,
Yes,
it is
Guildford Civic Hall and then home.
Yeah, but do you remember that sort of way back in the sort of maybe the end of the 70s or early 80s that it was almost like an in-joke in the music business, like, oh, big in Japan. In other words... Yeah. In other words, like they can't get arrested here, but they're big in Japan, and it was sort of this like in joke for musicians that like they're rubbish really. No, I'm really interested in them. Oh, but they're big in Japan, but so it proved to be. It's almost like the prophecy that came true because. There are so many places to play. There are so many countries. There are so many, and the last 30, 40 years has been this whole sort of awakening around the globe of everybody buying into the whole thing. Everybody, the internet, I'm sure, has just had a huge, impact.
And also the festival circuit too. The festival circuit must be so attractive because somebody else is doing all the organisation, really. You just got to swing in, play for an hour and a half and go.
Well, a couple of years back, sadly, as when Taylor Hawkins died, there were some, a couple of memorial shows, one in Wembley Stadium, which I couldn't make because I was in Japan, being big.
Big.
But I was able to fly back from Japan when we finished there. I was able to go over and do the show in Los Angeles at the Forum there as part of Taylor's memorial show. And it was just incredible that, there we are all these years on. And Taylor Hawkins, one of Taylor's favourite songs was Something About You, which is from the World Machine album, which we're going to be playing in full, of course, next year. And but the amount of musicians, the young musicians that were coming up and just saying, "Oh my God, that song, your band, this, that, and the other," and this is just incredible because it's the other side of the world. Who would know? Who knew when I was making lighters in Ronson's factory that I'd be the other side of the world, a few years down the line, and someone would be saying how much a particular song that I've been involved with meant to them. And, it's just an incredible thing. But as is music, of course, that the communicative value, the message that music sends and spreads, which incidentally, Rockin Robin's is an amazing music-based therapy, and it's a charity of which I'm very happy to be involved with. And it's very much because of the power that music has to reach people and to reach people that are very often less fortunate than ourselves, that actually need reaching and need help. And music will reach people in a way that words alone can't, that interaction with other people alone cannot, and that it makes existing far more worthwhile. Who was it who said that, life without music would be a mistake? Was absolutely right. And I can't remember who said that.
You did, Mark. You did.
Yeah. We're attributing it to you.
We're attributing it to you. Listen, it's been great to talk to you. I'm glad we got it organised.
Word down your way. Testing 2, 2.